Good day, everyone. Today we're at Old Fort Erie, just south of Niagara Falls, a section of the country that is littered with forts all along the Niagara River and otherwise. But this is a famous fort that I haven't visited yet. It is actually famous for its reenactment of the War of 1812 demonstrations, which unfortunately I've missed that this season, but definitely looking forward to returning to do that at some point. But today I found myself with the opportunity to actually go inside the fort while it's open on a slower day here in early September before the school groups, etc. come in. A limited season at this attraction. Unlike some of the other attractions in Niagara Falls, it's only open during the summer months from May to October. So we're here to capture it finally. Old Fort Erie for the first time. More bumps ahead. Outside of the fort, just at its entrance, with Buffalo in the background, you have this massive cannon pointed towards America, and then the entrance to the fort itself. Alright, so we have a film that starts our experience here.
America declares war on Britain. It is here, on the border, between the United States and British Canada, along the Niagara River, where the worst fighting of the War of 1812 will take place. Friends become foe. First Nation by the close and fight fire with fire. The entire length of the Niagara, on both sides of the river, is a wasteland. Most civilians leave. Black Rock and Buffalo, across the river from Fort Erie, become military camps. From there, the Americans will make a final attempt to invade Canada.
Just finished watching a fairly fascinating little vignette film to lead us into the museum that we're in now. This is the bloodiest battleground in Canada, as 3,000 casualties were recorded over a dispute over the possession of this fort for a two-month period in 1814. So there's a lot of history here that I wasn't actually really aware of. It was really fascinating to watch that film because it only captured just the main conflict there. And I didn't realize that the War of 1812 was actually longer than 1812, but that's just, I knew it was 2 years, but for some reason in my head I thought, oh, 1814 was a little weird, but yeah, this fort was actually an American possession. The Americans retreated from this fort in November of 1814 and basically blew it right up. And for those historians and any of you that probably might be watching this video, you'll know that this is not the original fort that we're actually at, but a rebuilt a replica. Now we're in this museum. There is many things to see in here, so we're just going to give you an idea because this is actually a very vast site, much more vast than I originally thought as some of these interactive displays go off. Far too much through this museum to go through on an individual basis to cover, and I'm not a historian, although I clearly love history, which is why we're here. Lots of original cannons. There was massive explosions that occurred on this fort. And not just one, but several of them over the conflict. It's fascinating. And of course, many deceased, of which we'll no doubt see more evidence of as we traverse these grounds. And here we can see the original fort, and this would be the Snake Hill Outpost, which was at the very end of that section. If you imagine it continuing on, it's almost like they cut this model off. They didn't have enough space to fit it quite in. There's a lot of muskets and stuff available. Comment below if you want to see more of the history of this region, as there is another fort on the American side. In fact, I think there's two of them that I've never visited before. North of Lewiston, Fort Niagara officially. And there are tours. Now, you don't actually have to tour it on your own here at Old Fort Erie, as there is actually guided tours every hour. I showed up just after the hour, so unfortunately I didn't get here in time for the most recent one, but I figured I'd just explore the grounds. I do have complimentary admission to this attraction. As I've mentioned in some other videos, if you work in an attraction in Ontario, which I fortunately do in a way, yeah, you get free admission at some places as part of the reciprocal program, so definitely look into that. If you're a history buff, it's definitely worth it, as there's a bountiful amount of free attractions available for you. And now we get to proceed outside into the fort itself. Well, the sun has come out for us, so let's go inside the fort. The visitor center is actually not attached to the fort itself, and it makes sense that there's an American flag actually prominently located on this fort instead of a Canadian one, considering that the last proper owners of the actual fort were American. They didn't build it, however. In fact, they did their best to reverse all that work. Oh, I gotta laugh at myself for how corny I am sometimes. Hello, soldier. Well, that's just how it goes. And so we're here in the middle of the fort. Very cool. Actually, the opening shots that I produced were just on the other side of these trees here. You can actually just crawl up and over that. I have this sticker on, and that's like the official sort of ticket to the grounds, because you can just basically walk right up to the fort at any time. And as long as the gates are open, for example, off-season, there's really nothing that would really stop you from walking up to the fort here at any time of the day. I'm not recommending that, it's just the facts, because we're now in the moat area. And we're going to save going into the barracks itself there. And as you've probably already figured out, I'm no historian, I'm no expert on history, and I've actually been meaning to stop and read my brochure, but I kind of just got immersed in this. You can't see, because of the way that this building is situated, really much about what it's about or its character. The fact that it's actually way more fascinating and well built up than I had thought. Possibly as good, if not better, than Fort George. Just from the angular perspective of it, because you really do feel immersed here. Once you get inside, say, this moat area, you can't even tell that you're in a town of, say, 30,000 people surrounding this area. Well, this is the original town itself, if you will, or how it sort of became established. And unfortunately, by going that way, we've kind of just walked all the way back to where we entered originally. So I'm gonna go in the opposite direction now, and we'll go inside the barracks and that'll kind of be Fort Erie. As I'm gonna read the brochure quickly. Maybe I can add a couple of interesting facts as we wander the grounds here. Just a couple of quick facts as I read up a bit on the history here. Now, this is the second fort. It was reconstructed in 1839, but it remained a tourist attraction, visited by people such as Mark Twain in between its destruction by the Americans in 1814 to that time, or 1839. Or 1939, sorry. So this is a newer construction, essentially. Hasn't even reached 100 years of age yet, but it is built on not the original grounds of the destroyed fort, but not the original British fort, which actually was on the river just south of here, just a little bit further south of here, but now it's just like the parkway lands and nothing really to see there. So I don't think there's any traces of that old fort still, because a lot of the stones and everything from the original two forts, per se, were used to construct other buildings like churches and stuff around here, some of which still exist today. So fascinating, and I'm sure some of the original stonework that was left maybe was used to reconstruct this fort, an original representation of the second fort that was unfinished at the time of when it was taken over by the Americans in 1814. Oh, it was 1814 and not 1812. There's so much history. There's a lot to cover, and I'm sure there's vlogs out there that have an hour's length of material to catch you up on this stuff. But if I give you a little bit of detail before we get inside and check out these buildings. Okay, well, we have a lot of work, and looks like these soldiers are having a little bit of a break in their quarters over there. So let's check out this building before we go and harass them. They definitely know their facts, so if we ask them questions about the fort, I'm sure they will graciously provide us with, or fill any gaps that we may have as far as the history of this place. I'm not sure you can go up there, but I will be going up there later. Why not? We have the commissary office, or where you can buy various goods. It's just sort of like a miniature kind of modern condo complex, really, right? Surgery, which is much too small for what were 3,000 casualties. You can understand why they always said the dead and dying that they had to leave behind in this location, among others, during the battle. Okay, we got some stairs to go up here. Quartermaster. This is where you get all of your essential goods for your daily life of service. It's just like a different time, because essentially you would enlist because you didn't really have anything else to do. You wanted to earn a buck and maybe get some land. Really be offered a lot back then just to serve, dare I say, a lot more than what you get today. Some more artifacts. We've already seen a couple museums today, so we're This is from the Douglas Battery, which would be the other, sort of closer to shore. You can see the location of it here. That's the original fort itself, and the Douglas Battery, as you can see, is the red arrows there, which would be sort of like a satellite fortification closer to the river. All sorts of artifacts. So we are now in the kitchen, which is actually just sort of like located to the side and underneath the building, or the floor that we were just in. It still actually smells active in here too. Into the second building here.
Yeah. I'm gonna go use the washroom and drop this off.
Some soldiers just hanging out in here, which would make sense because we're in the barracks. Okay, we just have one other room to discover in these two main structures. It's actually crazy. 137 American soldiers during the occupation were housed here, at least at the first time of when they took it over. You imagine 140 odd people living in these two quarters. Seems like a bit crazy. And then you have, of course, this plush section where the commanding general would be staying. You know, so promotions have their benefits, that's for sure. Spacious apartment. I just have one section left to check here, which is another one of these battlements next to the actual sort of in-houses. I don't know what they're called. It's been a while since I've, skimmed over my historical interests to remember automatically, because they're not both barracks, but if they are both barracks, then that would make sense. But I've come to hang out with some cannons now in the background, as I'm pretty sure these were pretty close to the originals, if not original to the time. Relics of the conflicts of the past of this region are definitely scattered throughout, so you can always find kind of one of these in a town center, etc. They engineered it so that the blast angle would not be cut off by the stones, so it is triangular in shape. And this cannon is twice the size as the other. We do have to come back to a point where they fire these off Seen many videos of that, but I've never seen it, so I'm definitely going to make sure to do that. I'm going to take that path that I originally took in the back to get close to the parking lot, because that's actually where I'm parked. So that's going to be it for the vlog here, guys. Thank you for joining me here from Old Fort Erie. Long been wanting to come and visit here. I now know more about this region and its history, so it's really kind of beneficial if you're interested in the history of the conflict of 1812, which was a crazy war that doesn't get much attention, considering that it ended up in a draw, essentially. Fascinating, fascinating place, well reconstructed, very, very immersive, and puts you into history. And I like that the soldiers are all kind of just like wandering around. I certainly hope that they get some school groups soon to keep them a bit busy, because yeah, it's definitely very slow and they're just kind of looking for stuff to do, and there's no enemy at bay. So yeah, definitely full kudos to them and the staff here. Very friendly and just very open to any questions that you have. I haven't asked for too much because I'm kind of like, I got a lot of things I'm doing today, but I'm sure on a different visit, if I come back here in the short term and if I cover it for you guys, there's a lot more that I could discover for sure. But for now, thank you for joining me for this tour of Old Fort Erie, and we'll see you soon in the next one. Thanks for dropping in.